It's January 27th, 2010, at the Glenview Public Library. We're here interviewing Mr. Russell Sorenson, born August 25th, 1920. Interviewers are Julius Gulstead and Matt Moore, here with the Glenview Veterans Oral History Project. Mr. Sorenson served in World War II. His highest rank was Sergeant 4th grade technician. Were you drafted or did you enlist?
Drafted.
Where were you living at the time?
I was living in Chicago, but I was drafted from Racine, Wisconsin, which was my home. I just was working in Chicago, but my real home was in Racine, Wisconsin, so that's where I was drafted from.
Why did you, do you recall your first days in service?
Vaguely, yes. Wasn't very exciting, I don't think. It was, going through the physical and getting clothes slapped at you, so you got your rations of clothes and stuff, and that's about all I remember.
How were your boot camp or any training experience?
We didn't call it boot camp. It was basic training. We went to Fort Warren, Wyoming, and I had my 22nd birthday there. We were standing out in August 25th, and the snow was snowing. It was a little depressing. That's all I remember of that.
Where exactly did you go?
From Wyoming, I went to California to parts school. It was mechanical parts school. We learned all the parts of vehicles and so forth. And then I was sent to, just the day before Christmas, went to Camp Polk, Louisiana, and had more training there, and joined the 11th Armored Division, which I was with for most of my Army career, was 3.5 years. And then it was miserable Christmas. It was cold and rainy stuff. And there and joined the 11th Armored Division, and was in Company B of the 133rd Armored Ordnance Battalion of the 11th Armored Division. And in what they call parts issue, it was parts of the vehicles we supplied for the tanks, trucks, and also the artillery and the instruments and everything we had to get parts for those vehicles and tanks when the mechanics wanted to repair them. And that was what I studied all the time, was the parts of vehicles and guns and so forth.
According to your biography, you served all over Western Europe. What was it like to move around and see so much of the world?
Well, it was mixed feelings, because I always wanted to go to Europe, not necessarily that way. But we went to England first, and I was in Trowbridge Barracks for 3 months. Our division was stationed there, and then when the Battle of the Bulge was going on, we got our vehicles, and I had a truck to drive with a 1-ton trailer on the back with an office in it that I ordered parts from. and we went to Southampton and went across the North Sea, put our trucks on a landing ship thing and lashed them down. And then I went to bed as we crossed the North Sea, which was very choppy, and I was on the bottom bunk, and I rolled out, and I got back in and went to sleep again because I was so tired. And then we got off the Cherbourg the next morning, France, and drove to, I can't remember the town now. And then that was in December. We went into battle, the Battle of the Bulge, on Christmas Day of '44. And we're not combat like the infantry and the tanks and artillery. So we were put in a home, at least our platoon was, of the parts people, in a house in Beaulay-Rosier, which was outside of Bastogne. And first night they let us sleep in a room with our bedding things, you know. And we heard bumps in the wall. You know, we thought surely the Germans were coming up behind us. It was the cows, and the next room was the barn. But then we went through France, Germany, Belgium, Luxembourg, Austria. And we were in Austria when the war was over finally. We spent the summer on the lake in the Bavarian Alps.
What did you expect when first heading into combat?
Well, I didn't expect anything. I just hoped I would survive, which I did. But as I say, we were a service unit. We were not combat, although I had a 50 caliber circular machine gun on that truck, which fortunately we didn't use much.
Were there many casualties in your unit?
Well, in the division, yes, there were many of them, but there were 14,000 men in the division, so I don't know exactly how many, but I do have a book that tells about them, and there were many of them.
What specifically was your job or assignment?
I was the parts issue deadline clerk, which meant that I had to order the parts for vehicles that were deadline that couldn't move, and then the mechanics would come to our truck and tell us what they wanted and had the requisition, and I had to order, put it on a requisition, and then was radioed to the depot, and then we'd send the man to get the part. If we didn't have it on our trucks, we had 5 trucks full of parts, but we didn't have every kind, so that when they were deadlined, I had to order the parts, and hopefully we got it. We usually did.
Were you awarded any medals or citations?
I was awarded 5 medals, but I didn't earn any of them. As far as I know, I was just, didn't do anything bad. I have a list of the 5 medals, but I don't think you want them. They're good conduct and the three battle stars from the Ardennes, the Rhineland, and Central Europe. And that was 3 medals right there.
How did you stay in touch with your family?
By V-mail, mostly, when I was over there. And you probably don't know what V-mail is, but it's, I should have brought one. I have one that I sent to my aunt, who was in an institution because she had a leg off. She couldn't move very well. But she told my mother that she would like me to send her a V-mail. And so I did send her a letter when I was on charge of quarters or something. And I had a typewriter, and I typed her a letter on the email thing, and then they would put it in microfilm it down to a tiny thing, and then air lift it over to the States, and they would blow it up and send it back to them. And my Aunt Mill had a scrapbook, and I told her I hoped she would let me have it when she didn't need it anymore, and then she could put this V-mail in there, and it would adhere to the title of the scrapbook. And something like that. She was very happy to get it. But I corresponded with all my family. Wonderful letters.
When were there times of pressure, or when were things stressful?
Well, surprisingly, after a few weeks at war, and you're always busy, there's a lot of things to do. And being very young, I wasn't afraid too much. I didn't worry. You know, I didn't think every minute I was going to die. We were strafed once, and we did do a little shooting across the river. They said there was some enemy there, and we all aimed our machine guns at them. Hope we hit them. But I don't know that we did. But actually, most of my memories are happy ones. Because we were together 3.5 years, and the fellows in our platoon, 11 of us, were like brothers, and we got along well. And I missed them awful when I was back home for a while.
Can you tell me about what's a happy memory that you remember today?
Oh, one time we liberated some veal. That was in a meat shop, I guess, or something. Anyway, we had a little kerosene stove, and we barbecued it. It was so good. And we also somebody liberated a bunch of cases of wine, and we got one, and built a little space under my desk, and had straw around the bottle, so we had wine every night. We could have a glass of wine, and we were stopped. And it was a beautiful thought. Oh, we had a jar of strawberry jam that we got somewhere too. It was toast, and it was great.
What did you think about the food that you were served?
Well, in barracks it was fine. In most places, it wasn't too good down in Louisiana, but overseas, we had the C rations and K rations, and I thought they were good, but I missed fresh vegetables and stuff like that, and I finally ended up getting sick, and I was in the hospital 5 days just before I came home. And in the hospital they said, your group is leaving in 5 days, can you go? And I said yes. I was in 5 days, and they asked me if I could go, and I said yes, and I did. And they were very nice to me. They put me in a Jeep that had heat in it rather than a truck. And so I managed to get on the boat going home all right. And I was in January '46, and they told me I wouldn't have to do any guard duty. I was a T4 sergeant. I wouldn't have to charge of quarters or anything, but if I would type the menus for the officers in the ship. And I said, sure, I'd be glad to. And I did, and it worked out fine, except that at one time the seas were so bad that the carriage on the typewriter kept going back and forth. I told her I just couldn't type them. And so they said, well, that's all right, But when we got back into port in New York, they told us there was a 5-foot hole in one of the holes of the ship. And the Norwegian sea captain that we had said it was his worst crossing in 25 years, something like that. And it was, I didn't get sick at all. The boat just went like that, like that. We could go down and see the water down there, and then we go up and see the sky. But, we made it.
Is there anything special that you did for good luck?
Pray.
How did people entertain themselves?
I mean, us and the people in the army, you mean? Mostly talking and writing letters. And, we never had boring times. We were always busy. We never knew what day it was, never knew when Sunday was, because we wore the same clothes all the time. We didn't take them off.
Did you keep a diary?
No, I wish I had. But then I'd remember all the bad things too, and I don't remember them. Unfortunately.
What did you think of officers or your fellow soldiers?
They were all good, although our company commander was something not to be desired. Although he liked me, so I didn't have any trouble with him, but he would tell some of them, now, you stay out of the kitchen, he said to Larry, and he said, I've never been there, and he said, well, you stay out. He was, as I say, he was all right to me, but he wasn't very nice to a lot of people.
Do you remember the day that your service ended?
What?
The day that your service ended? Do you remember anything about that day?
The day I got out, February 2nd of 1946. I remember it well. It was at Fort Sheridan. And I got on the train and went up to Racine, to my home, where my family was. And my folks had kept the Christmas tree up till the 1st of February, and they said they were afraid it was going blow up or something. So they'd taken it down. They were trying to save it up till I got home, because they knew that was coming. But then the next few days I started thinking about my buddies, and I felt very alone, because everybody else went to work and went to their, did their stuff, and I was just trying to enjoy myself, but I didn't have anybody to enjoy it with.
What did you do, like, with your family or anything when you got home?
Well, I stayed with them for 2 weeks, and I finally went back to Chicago, went to work. I worked at Charles A. Stevens' company store in Chicago, and I was a hairdresser. And they welcomed me back, and I was very happy to see all these people I knew, and went to work, and had to brush up on a few things. I'd been out of the business for 3.5 years.
You made a lot of friends in service, and now did you or do you keep in touch with any of those people?
Yes, I did, and I with all of our platoon that we were together for so long, and every year our 11th Armored Division had a convention in a different city in the country, and my wife and I didn't have any kids, so we went to most of them up until the last few years, and the last one is going to be in Kentucky at Fort Knox, I think. This year, last year, in 2009, they had the second to last one in Lisle, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago in the west. And I wrote, we had publications, and I wrote in it that if I was conscious, I would be there. I was, just barely. I had problems, but we drove down to Lisle and went to it. And we hadn't been to one for 3 or 4 years, because I didn't want to fly or drive that far when there were other parts of the country, because they were all over the country. But we enjoyed it, except that I was the only one from my battalion, not only my company or platoon, but the whole battalion. There was one 133rd Ordnance man, that was me. And then I was supposed to, I always, at the reunions, I would carry the candle on the Friday night memorial service. And so I was anxious to go to this one, and I thought it was at 5 o'clock, and it was at 4 o'clock, so I missed it. That was a disappointment. But,
did you join a veterans organization?
I joined the VFW for a couple of years after I was back, but one of the fellows I worked with, Pete, and I went to the meetings, and they were all World War I veterans, and they were old like me now, 89, and doddering, and they would say that they visited so-and-so in the cemetery and all this, that, and it was not things we were interested in at that time. So, but then, as I say, I joined the 11th Armored Division Association right from the start. We had our first convention in the Congress Hotel in Chicago in 1947. I have a picture of that. I don't have it here.
Is there anything that you'd like to share about the photographs that you brought?
Well, I have these pictures, but they're not very clear. There's one of me in my trailer, which was my office. I was the driver of the truck with me. Company Beyond the 33rd Parts issue. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm. You got it.
Okay. These are all pictures of the war mostly, but they're not anything very dramatic, except our division, when we landed in Austria toward the end of the war, liberated the concentration camp called Mauthausen in Austria, near Linz, Austria. And I have pictures of the bodies. We were there the day after it was liberated, and that was the day after the end of the war, August 9th, I guess. And there are pictures of the bodies, which is, you know, just stacked up there. If you want to look at that, but not beautiful.
What was it like seeing things like that?
That made me cry. Awful.
Did your military experience influence your thinking about the war or the military in general?
Well, it made me think I didn't want to be in it. That's what it's doing. I was glad to be out, but as I say, I really had a lot of good times and made good friends and kept in touch with them all my life. There's only only one person of the platoon, and he lives in Madison now. He did live in Florida, but he's got Alzheimer's, so I talk to his wife on the phone once in a while. All the rest of them are gone.
What was most memorable about the people you met while serving in the military?
I can't think of anything as the most memorable. I have lots of memories, good memories. But offhand, I can't just think of any. Maybe if I had a long time to think about it, I might, but I can't say any one thing. Well, I might say that I was on guard on duty in Germany, I guess it was, and it was a clear moonlit night, and you know, I was walking my paces around. They showed us where to walk back and forth and so forth. And all of a sudden I saw this man on the tailgate of a truck, and I raised my rifle up, and I didn't tell him afterwards, but I didn't know if the safety was on or not, so I thought I'd check it, and I pulled the trigger. The safety was off, and this man standing on the tailgate of the truck said, "Jesus Christ, sorry, it's me, Louis. I'm taking a leak." I said, "Sorry, Louis." The next morning, our CO called us out in formation and said, "Now, we want you to be alert, but don't get carried away with it or something."
How did your service and experiences affect your life?
I felt like I should go to college, and I talked to a counselor at Northwestern, and he said, "If you've got a trade, stick with it, because it's very hard to get into any university, and you're better off." And I wanted to be a pharmacist, and I decided I was better off not being a pharmacist because I might have got to be a drug addict. So, I was with Marshall Fields for 25 years as a hairdresser there, and retired in '82. Had a wonderful life since. I did volunteering at the Art Institute and the Botanic Gardens for 25 years also after that.
What comes to mind when you hear about World War II today?
As what's his name said, it was the good war. And it was compared to the ones that are now. I can't even imagine going into the Middle East there, the horrible things that they have to go through. Besides, you don't know who's who. I don't see how they can tell who's a friend or who's a foe.
Is there anything that you would like to add that we haven't covered in this interview?
I think I've told you about everything I think you should know. This is the book of the 11th Armored Division.